My name's Ian Murray. Well, I'm 60, coming up to 66 this year. Originally born in Hortley Springs, spent part of my life at Peelaw on the banks of the Tyne, and then ultimately moved to Wardley, and then from Wardley, around about the 1980s, we moved through to Washington, where my mum and dad, a couple of friends and grandparents bought a house within Washington. Well, bought land to build a house in Washington, which was done with buying land from the Washington Corporation, and we moved into Office Row in Harriton or Rickleton, because it kept changing its village status while they built the house, and we were in corporation houses while we built the houses. So we built the houses in Lindburn, which is just up from the George at Harriton. So bought the land, and then my grandma built her house. My mum had her house built, and our friends, so they were in 18, 20 and 22 Lindburn. And my mum's cousin was a builder, so he built my grandma's house from start to finish. So it was built to the best possible standards, because my grandma had looked after him when he was a little lad, and sorted him out. And then he built the shell for my mum's house and the shell for my mum's friend in 20 and 22. And then they fitted it out with friends who were plasterers, plumbers, heating engineers. But I remember he built the house and he had to put a trench across the garden to attach the telephones and everything into it. Moved in there. Probably my brother's now, how old's my brother? My brother's 60, he'll be 64 because he's born in 1960. So we moved from Wardley to Washington round about, he got an apprenticeship at Clark Chapman's, and he had to get from Washington to Clark Chapman's every morning. So he had to walk from Office Row in Harriton all the way down to Fatfield Bridge, where he got the 39 bus. Mm-hmm. Now the 39 bus subsequently became the 194 and is probably the M4 now, and it went on the old way back. So if he was, that would have been probably around about 1976, 77 when we moved through to Washington buying that. And my mum lived in that house till she died 6 years ago, so that would be, I was 60, so that would be 2018.
Amazing.
So, thoroughly enjoyed it.
Did it feel like a big adventure to be the idea of building your own house?
Well, actually, all of Washington was a big adventure. To be honest, my uncle had a business. Well, he had a greengrocers on Leam Lane Estate at Fewster Square, but he still retained contacts because the family originally came from, say, Hortley Spring or Headingley Hall, and we used to. There was a cash and carry at Hortley Spring that he used to go and buy his cigarettes from and things like that. So many a time, well, actually, in building that, there was also Macro at Washington.
Oh, yes, of course.
And he would go there. So in the olden days, coming from Leam Lane along the old road to Hortley Spring, which is totally different now to where you go up the M14, come off at the top beside B&Q, down the Washington Highway, down through. We used to go the old way, which was Heworth to Concord, and then turn between where the Beehive pub is and the Co-op in Concord, and that used to be the drain road all the way down. Then you'd go into Old, that would connect you straight down to Washington, Old Washington Centre, round the roads there up to down to Fatfield, up the other end, underneath the single carriage railway line, through to Shiny Row, and then Shiny Row, and most of that road's the way that it would be.
Yeah.
But when they were building the Washington Highway, you could see the Washington Highway as you were driving like between Biddick and Fatfield, you could see this dual carriageway with lots of roundabouts and slip roads coming on, and you think, what the heck's that? How's this all going to change? Because you use single lined or maybe two-way traffic, but nothing more than that. And then suddenly you had this dual carriageway cutting through, and the new town being developed at various different stages, how it built on. And as I say, I think I can remember when the galleries were first built. It was built in sections, and we went to the galleries to do our shopping because they had the new supermarket there, and I think the new supermarket was a big Presto's.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, you think now there was Woolcourt one end and Sainsbury's or Service Centre at the other. But I'm sure when it was first built, it was Presto's in the centre where the banks are on the upper level. And you went in there and it was crumbs. You look at this compared to the supermarkets that you had beforehand.
Yeah.
This was massive. And the car park, I'm sure it was like a red cinder car park. So you parked in and came down. I don't know whether you had big trolleys then or you just carried them back. Because I was thinking about this one. So, well, if you had trolleys and you pushed it on cinder, it would have just fallen in.
Yeah.
But that's where it was. And then you had the parks being developed, like Princess Anne Park, and then you went down to the riverside. And how the different, like where we were in Harrington and Riggleton, there was cricket fields, there was playing fields all around there. And slowly but surely land was built on it. And when we were at Office Row, our next door neighbours were a couple of brothers who were miners who used to work at the Harrington Colliery. And I don't know if you know Harrington, but on the corner is it usually where there's like the big mock Tudor houses?
Oh yeah.
And they were telling me, Mum, that they'll never build on there. They'll never build on there because that's where the water supplies and everything for the washing area, the big ponds were there. So when they built the houses for that area, they had to go down, and then they had to put concrete blocks on to build the houses on top of concrete blocks. So you didn't build normal foundations, they built them and then put big concrete blocks on the ground and then built the houses on the concrete blocks. And then you went down the road and they built various other houses down on there.
It's fascinating to think they would take that decision rather than sort of thinking, oh, we'll build elsewhere.
No, it was one of the last areas in Washington to be built. Because coming down the highway, like Harrington Church was always there at the bottom, and you could always see that as you came down. And the trading estate, like where Macro was built. And then the Development Corporation moved in and built, maybe it's what you would class as council houses, but then there was the intermix of the private builders that went in and around. Because at the top end of Office Row, there was the cricket field, and that has been decimated in size because of the new developments that were built at the end of there. Then you got on that area, you then had the Washington Private Hospital being built.
Oh yeah, of course.
So all of that area is one of the last areas to be built. I mean, where I live now in Teal Farm, that's probably the last area to be developed. And that was probably last because you had the Turner and Newell, or the Durham Chemical Works there. And obviously asbestos and things like that being thought about being built, left in the ground. I've never built or I've never grown vegetables in the garden just in case of the area that it might have been contaminated with. But I mean, that area there around Teal Farm area is the last area which has been developed by the corporation, and they're now just filling that off and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, it was an adventure when you move through. Used to go for many a nice walk on a Sunday afternoon and just head down to the riverside and either cross the bridge at Fatfield and then walk down to Cox Green and cross over and then wander up and then just work my way around and discover parts of Washington I didn't know existed. You'd wander here, and I still go out for little wanders and come across places of Washington I didn't know existed. COVID, for example, when that struck, I used to go out for a walk and walk up one side, walk down to Cox Green and walk up to Fatfield, cross over and walk back down. And then sometimes I'd take some of the little side tracks and I found little ponds I didn't know existed, walkways, and found houses down close by the river and think, I didn't know these places existed. And you can see the history of old Washington as you walk down on the riverside, especially in the winter when all the trees have lost the leaves and you can see remnants of, where the viaduct is that crosses the river. Well, if you're walking down from Fatfield towards Cox Green, it looks like there's remnants of a little village there. And then you can see on the right hand side down there, into the hillside, there's like the drift mines that were dug. Would you ever want to go down into some of those? Just thinking of Clapson, but there's obviously people have been in, even though they've been bricked up, they've been knocked down, people have gone in there. But I've always found Washington a very nice place in which to live because there's a mix of everything there. Yeah.
So, have you lived in Washington continuously since the 70s?
I lived with my mum and dad at Lynburn at Harriton, and then 1989 I moved down to Teal Farm, and Teal Farm at the time was I think still being developed, and I bought a bungalow down there, and it was one of the recessions that was going on, and money was tight for a lot of people, but I had savings and I was able to go in and buy the house. And actually the funny bit about that was when I moved in, I negotiated the house price to come down to, I think, around about the 40 to 45,000 pound mark, and the rating band that it was in was higher, and so I appealed to the council to get it down to this is what I paid for the brand new house, and I don't see why I should pay the higher rate band. And I won my appeal, but not only did I win my appeal, but everybody else on the estate who had the 2-bedroom bungalow that I had got a rebate from the council.
So you'd have been the hero of the estate then?
Well, I think I would have been if they found out who had actually done the appeal and won it on behalf of them. I told my next door neighbour who had the same house as I was, but there was other people in other parts of the estate that I wouldn't know from Adam, but got that, and she said, oh, I got that. It was you. It was me, yeah. It was me that did it. So, yeah, I've never worked in Washington. Seeing the changes in the town, like certain parts of some of the districts that were built and have been knocked down and rebuilt in the 60 years since they set everything up. But you look at it and the industries that's there, and I think the development of the Nissan car plant has made an awful lot of difference, bringing in employment, factories and housing estates to accommodate the new people that have moved in there, and the industry that it's brought into the town for both Washington and Sunderland.
Yeah. So you always worked outside then? Were you in Sunderland or?
I worked, my main place of employment was the paintworks on the banks of the Tyne at Felland, International Paints. So I worked there all of my adult life till I finished working when I was 57. So that would be something like 2015. So I worked there all of my life, and then Progress moved on. Had no complaints with the company when I got made redundant and nothing like that. Came back and I looked to go and put something back into the community. And I went looking for a job, but most of the jobs were north of the Tyne, and the thought of having to fight my way over the Tyne Bridge every day rolled that out. And then I looked at the voluntary sector, and I thought about becoming a guide at Washington Old Hall, because where I live, it would probably be half an hour walk from home so I'd get there. And then I saw there was this opportunity down at Sunderland Maritime. Having worked in a paint company supplying the maritime industry, I thought it would be nice to come down here. And to be honest, I mean, I'm not very technically minded, but the company was, so I learned skills at the company, so that when I came down here, setting up spreadsheets, doing this and doing that, and setting up a filing system that we could find where everything was. It brought this charity from like the 1900s where you're using carbon paper to record what you were doing, to actually having like a spreadsheet where you could put your accounts together, income and expenditure and stuff like that. And I've thoroughly enjoyed being down here, applying for grants, winning the grants, losing other ones that we didn't get. But it's just a friendly bunch of grumpy old men who are never happier than when the morning, but they've got the common goal of keeping this place going. So it's a pleasure to work with them.
It's amazing.
But like in Washington, Washington was forever evolving. It never remained the same, and it was changing, but always for the better. There didn't seem to be any bad news about Washington. There was the elements of when they were moving people out of, say, the slum areas of Sunderland, and some areas of Washington got a bad reputation because they were taking the overspill from Sunderland. But that never really affected. I've never felt unsafe in Washington. Sometimes when I've come back from a night out and I would get the bus back, because my area isn't well served by buses, I'd get the bus and get off at, say, is it the Biddick pub? And then just walk down through Brady Square, underneath the railway bridge, and then back into my estate. Never really frightened, never bothered us. But there's things goes on. There's lots of things I don't know that go on, and it doesn't bother us. I'm just happy with where I am, and I'm happy to live in Washington and never really wanted to live anywhere else. That's
great. So how old would you be when you moved into Washington?
Well, when we moved into Washington, my brother was, he would be 16, 17, because he just started an apprenticeship at Clark Chapman's. Right. I'm 2 years older than him, so if he was 17, I would be 20.
Right.
I would be 19, 20.
So, I mean, was the nightlife and stuff for younger people at the time? Or?
Well, the nightlife, I mean, if you take me on going out for nightlife, I worked at the Felon, and if we went out for a night out, it would tend to be a night out over Newcastle. I don't often come down to Sunderland for a night out. Part of the things with Washington, each of the villages seem to have their own little pub and a little centre on that. So when we moved through to Washington, you had, in the village of Tarleton, you had the George Pub, which is now an Italian restaurant. And then at Rickleton, you had I think it was originally the Liberal Club, and then it became a pub. And I don't know what it is there now, because that was at the top of Office Row, but you could then walk down from Harriton down to Fatfield, where you had the North Biddick Social Club, you had the In-Between, you had the Havelock, and you had the Biddick pub. So you had 3 or 4 pubs down there and no houses, and it survived. The club is still going strong now, and the pubs have converted into pub cum diners, and but there's an active social life down there on a Friday night. But I go down the club on a Friday night, but I don't tend to go to the other places. I don't know whether being a single lad, I tend to have friends and I go to different places, but on a Saturday afternoon I'll go through to Concord with a couple of friends and we'll go and have literally a couple of pints and just sit there and reminisce on what's happening on the week and stuff like that. But no, it was just all part of Washington. Well, I think sometimes within Washington, when we used to go down to the George, there was people in the George, old people, who had always lived in Harriton at the time, and they came in and they had their special place that they sat in. And if you sat in their seat, they would come in and sit in that seat till you decided you were going to move somewhere else, because they weren't going anywhere else. So it seemed to be very, in a lot of cases, there were individual villages connected within the greater Washington area, and the people that were local to that area and they went to a particular pub. They didn't go to other ones. And it was strange, like when the George closed, a lot of the people then drifted down to the club or to the pubs down in Washington, down at Fatfield. And there was always like a bus service that went from like the shopping centre at Harriton down to Fatfield, and so they could get the bus up and down there. But no, I think there was a lot of development. The strangest thing with Washington, if you ever go down to Fatfield, is they knocked down Fatfield Village. And they put in new roads and developments. Like it always looked like from Fatfield Bridge up to the community centre that is where they were going to build the really posh houses with like riverside connections, and the roads and everything were put in there, but they never built anything on them. You just wonder why, how, what it happened, you know, when you had a fully developed village there and it was knocked down. All the left was the pubs. And that was always strange. You think, well, when they're going to develop this. I think the other thing that helped the development of the Washington town was effectively bringing the Galleries shopping centre in there with like the key Woolco at one stage, Sainsbury's, Saver Centre at the other, but other shops, and then the banking hub on the upper level with the free car parking. So that brought people in. If you take it now, where you've got on the other side where the Galleries is, you've got the retail park where Marks and Spencers are now going to be building their new shop, because you've got the Marks and Spencers Simply Food, but then they've bought 3 or 4 units further down and there's going to be a proper Marks and Spencer there. Now, the shop in Sunderland's closed and people saying, oh, well, will they move to Sunderland? Well, there's a very good bus service from Sunderland to Washington, but the other great advantage of the Galleries is there's plenty of free parking space there. Now, we were talking the other day and he was saying, well, would people come through because is there enough parking space? I would have said for 90% of the year there is enough parking space there. Yeah. If you take in the 2 months leading up to Christmas, there's never enough parking space there without Marks and Spencers, but there should be enough space in there, and there's still plenty of spaces further away from the galleries on the edges where the car parks are there. It just means you have to walk a little bit further.
Exactly.
And the bus services are not bad there either.
No.
And there used to be like the big hotels there just off the motorway, and the motorway A1M and the M194. You had good connection links, and you've got very good connection links for businesses to get straight onto the motorways to deliver what they've got to do. So I don't think the Washington Corporation could not be regarded as a total success for everything that they've done for the area. You take the history, I mean, they've tried to preserve the F-pit, and I think it could maybe be prepared, it could have been preserved a little bit better. You've got the parks there, like Princess Anne Park. You've got lots of places where you can go for a walk and escape the pressures of that's going on there. And there is plenty of social activities where there's pubs if you want to go and have a pint. There's lots of coffee shops where if you're around and go and have, and they still preserve the independence of the little villages that were there previously, and like the schools which have been developed in a link on there. I think the people who developed the Washington have got to be commended on the plans and what they did. I don't think there's anything that they've done that has been badly wrong in the town. I think the one thing about Washington that never really understood is the roads, like the Washington Highway and the 1-2-3-1 straight roads connecting. But the thing that was always quirky was the villages themselves when they built them. There wasn't a straight road in, they were all round to get in there. And you could see where you wanted to be, but you couldn't get there because there was a one-way, there was a bus lane, but you couldn't get into it, trying to get to the pubs. That was a bit quirky, but once you knew where you were going and get your way around, you could find your way to it. There was history. I mean, there was the army camps that were there, I think, at the top of Biddick and stuff that which. Well, you see, if you take the old town of Washington, it was obviously all developed around the pit, and obviously you had at Concord, you had the big slag heap which went up into the sky and stuff like that. But all the Washington villages were all originally like mining communities. And like with the new town developing that, it was when the pits in the area were all closing down. So you had new forms of employment coming into the town, so you didn't seem to have mass unemployment there. They managed to bring in new skills and new opportunities for people and keeping it building. Maybe it's just the building work, and they went from being miners to being builders and things like that. So there was plenty going on, and there always seems to be. With the Nissan plant being there, there's been, like where I live, there's the supply industries building around Nissan, and so that's been keeping it going ever since Nissan moved in and still moving on. And
so you think it's still developing and everything?
Yeah, that's you can see it going on. New roads going in, new trading estates developing, all over. So yeah, there's nothing. I can't say anything wrong about the Washington Development Corporation. Amazing. It has been a good bit of planning for the area in general, and it's taken an awful lot of, it's done an awful lot of good, and I can't see very little bad that it did in the process. Well, the other aspect of a positive outcome of the Washington Development Corporation has been the return of the wildlife to the area. When you've been out on the walks, I mean, I've seen kingfishers down on the river, I've seen the swans on the river, and the greatest pleasure that I recently, when COVID was on, when I was doing the daily walks up to Fatfield Bridge and back, was to see the otters in the river. And actually, occasionally, I think I know where they are, and I don't really want to say where they are, but sometimes you just be able to, from Fatfield Bridge, watch there's fish suddenly jumping out of the water, which was implying that something was chasing them. But there's been sparrowhawks, I've seen there, kingfishers, different types of birds in the area. Even seen seals swimming up the river as far as Fatfield Bridge as well. So in some of the little ponds, there's various ducks and swans and geese all around there, and the little sparrows and finches and blue tits and other things like that. There has been an awful lot of wildlife that had left the area and has come back. I'm sure I've seen foxes as well, and they can be good as well as bad. It's nice to see them there, but foxes tend to be merciless killers and kill for the sake of killing and other things. But there has been a noticeable return of wildlife to the area.